Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to That Mill podcast. My name's Omer. Joining me today, I've got two fellow friends of the show. I've got Dan. Hello, mate. How are you? You all right?
Hello, mate. I have to say the excitement is gradually starting to build now. I purchased my Gillingham ticket for the pre-season friendly today, and the fixtures are out. So, all eyes start of August, but nice to kind of have that football feeling slowly coming back again.
Absolutely, mate. And I'm the same with you, buzzing for it to all start again. And bizarrely enough, I'm over the Blackburn game, I think, Joe. So welcome, Joe, as well. How you feeling, mate?
Yeah, I'm all right. I think it's starting to feel real now, and it feels like the season's about to start again, and we can now kind of get over the nightmare end of last season finally. It's a shame it's been dragging on in my mind for God knows how long. So it's quite nice to start thinking about next season and putting last season behind us, and lots to talk about today, I'm sure. We've got a few things kind of planned, haven't we? But yeah, looking forward to the season ahead. Looking forward to the show, of course.
I do think I'm just over our season, pretty much. But anyway, today's show, guys, we'll be talking all things transfers and rumours. The elephant in the room is obviously Zian Flemming being linked away to Burnley. We'll touch on a bit about Josh Koroma being linked to the club, Lewis Travis, also Tyler Burey and his potential move out of the club, and obviously a few other bits and bobs along the way. So let's get straight into it. Dan, Burnley are interested in Zian Flemming and supposedly, depending on who you believe, had a bid not back to roughly £6 to £8 million. What's your initial thoughts, mate, and how you feeling about the idea of Flemming leaving the Den?
I don't think it's a surprise there's interest in him. I mean, come on, if anyone who scores 15 goals in the Championship from midfield's going to get interest, let alone it being your first season in English football. What we do have going in our favour is that he does still, he has a contract. I think he's got 2 or 3 years left on that deal. So we don't have to sell him. It's not like where we had Jed Wallace and we're on the verge of losing him. We need to try and ship him out just to try and get some money in. We're not kind of pressured. But I do think that bid that the Burnley bid, I think it was about 7 million, as you touched on there. I don't think that's nowhere near enough. Chuck in, the talk of a possible sell-on clause to Fortuna Sittard. I think personally, I'm interested to get your guys' views on this as well. I'd be looking at something in the kind of 12 to 15 million price range.
I think you've nailed it on the head there from my point of view. I mean, we had a bit of the chatter in our podcast chat, as I'm sure everyone's had in all various Millwall chats in the last few days. I mean, Joe, for myself, I personally would be trying to hold on, with, clenching onto him at the minute, because I think there's kind of that incentive in my head where if he has another good season and say we somehow manage to time into contracts and have some sort of release clause in there, like that, I'm thinking 12 to 15 million. But if he scores another 15 goals next season and he's got another 2 years left on his deal or 3 years left on his deal, we're looking at maybe 20 million these days, which is crazy in itself, and it's crazy football's gone that way. But how are you feeling about the idea of Flemming leaving, and what would you personally do if you was in control?
First of all, I don't really give much about Flemming. I'm not really a massive fan of Flemming. It's obviously I've got his shirt behind me on my wall or anything like that. So I'll be gutted if he goes, to be honest with you. But again, I think if we get the rewards for it financially, it just softens the blow a little bit. A bit like you guys, I don't really want to see him go. I don't think we need to sell him. The great thing about the club at the moment, we're in a good sort of situation financially. John Berylson and Rowett have come up a few times, so we don't have to sell players anymore like we used to. He still has two years left on his contract, so we keep another season. Yeah, potentially it could help us out. His value could go up if he has another good season. The only thing is a bit of a risk, a bit of a gamble. If he doesn't score many goals next season, has a bit of a flat one, suddenly his valuation goes down. He's got 1 year left in his contract. We know he's not going to sign a new extension on that. And, could we be faced with a situation where we kind of, I'm selling him for peanuts in a year's time, or he'll let his contract run out and end up leaving on a free potentially. So it's a risky game. I mean, Burnley have made 2 offers now. 2 offers being rejected. They put a third offer in, or actually they think about putting a third offer in. And you do wonder, again, it's a bit of cloak and dagger here. I mean, will they make that third offer? If they do, is that the final offer? Do they then go and look at other options? A bit like you guys say, I think we get like sort of 12, sort of 15 million for him. It helps us out. Yes, we don't get all of that money, but financially it puts us in a good position to look at other options and other players and reinvest that money into maybe sort of 2 or 3 players rather than just having one. So, it'd be interesting to see how it pans out. And the elephant in the room is actually Zian Flemming. He's over in Africa, isn't he? In Tanzania, I think they call it. Or he's out there fucking chasing like lions, tigers, and bears and all that stuff. We're all here, like, fucking shaking, worried about what his future. He's not. He's loving it, isn't he? But
It's an interesting one, and I suppose he is literally the elephant there in that case, isn't he?
We're a worried one of the day. Take a piss.
But I suppose, the pull of Vincent Kompany, isn't it? And also Burnley after the season they had last season. I think if it was like, if it was Luton, I mean, I don't know, it probably looked a lot less appealing. The fact that you have to play at Luton is one thing, but also with that, like, for Kompany, the trajectory of Burnley, he signed a new contract. I'm pretty sure he's definitely committed his future to the foreseeable. Dan, like, it's kind of like the temptation for Flemming, I suppose. I mean, we're guessing, obviously, we don't know. There's no insight from our side or anything like that. But if you've got Vincent Kompany wanting you specifically, making bids for you, and also, Burnley, the trajectory they're going, it's a hard one for Flemming, isn't it, I think? And, he's loved by the club, and I think he loves being here too. But you kind of don't begrudge it for him a little bit, especially with the Premier League and the carrot of playing under Kompany at Burnley, I feel like.
Yeah, I think, unless you're playing for your boyhood club, the dream is as a footballer to probably play at this point in time in the football world, to play in the Premier League, which, it is the best league in the world. Obviously, Vincent Kompany, he did an unbelievable job at Burnley last season, was linked with, the Tottenham and the Chelsea jobs in the summer, which kind of speaks testament of the job he did. Signed that new deal, so he knows he's going to be there. The only thing that kind of makes me think about this Flemming transfer is that there's been numerous kind of reports that Burnley wanted to sign Nathan Tella and Ian Marston, two players they had on loan last season. But apparently they don't want to pay 15 million for either of them. That's kind of the prices. They've kind of been quoted around 15, I think 20 for Marston, but definitely around 15 for Tella. If they don't want to pay 15 for someone who's just bagged near enough 20 goals from right wing, like, are they going to want to pay 15 million for a player that hasn't played at all under Vincent Kompany? So, there's a very, and the club don't have to sell, but it's like the way I look at it is we bought him for 1.7 million last season. We're on the, like, if we do sell him, we're going to, like, 5 times the money we bought him for, which is brilliant, but. I don't think 10 million's enough, especially if that sell-on clause exists as well.
So just on that, Joe, I mean, I was going to ask you, because we spoke about this when we did the development show, and so after the game, and we said this is what we want to do: produce talent, but also sign players, and then reinvest the money when their value's hit. But it's a hard one to put the value on them players, isn't it? And how to determine when it's the right time to let them go.
I think the difficult thing is, every player obviously has got a price, haven't they? And there's a price of what they're worth, and there's a price what you would want to sell it for, depending on your circumstances. I think at the moment, if we were honest, I don't think Flemming's pretty worth. I hope there's no sort of Burnley sort of scouts listening to this. I don't think it's worth more than 6-7 million. Let's be honest. We look at Gyökeres at the moment going to Sporting Lisbon for 17 million, I think it is, and he's by far been a fantastic Championship player the last 2-3 years. Last season, I think he scored 20 goals, got 15 assists. If anything, you think, why aren't Burnley looking at a player like that instead? So for 50, if they pay 50 million for Flemming, cut a million more, they could probably get someone like Gyökeres playing for them, who I think is a very, very talented player. And then you look at the levels of where we're playing in the Championship compared to the Premiership. No one's kind of proven yet. So you play the Premiership, he may completely fail in the Premiership. And like Dan said, he hasn't played for Burnley. He's a bit alien to them at the moment. So it's a real sort of delicate one. The reinvestment thing, go back to your point there, Omer, is true. I mean, Gary Rowett said to me and Chris Chapman, when we were in the lounge in the last season, he said, he had a conversation with John Berylson. He said, if we got 8 million for him, what do you want to do? And John Berylson said, I'll turn it down. That's 8 million. And then he jumped, whether he was joking or serious, but he turned around and said to us, but could you imagine we got 8 million, he said, we could probably buy 3 or 4 Zian Flemmings, or that equivalent of £1.7 million players. What I loved was the thought that he said that to me, so I knew where his mind's at. And I kind of, went back to him and went, exactly what Peterborough have done and what Brentford have done and things like that, but they reinvest the money and build it. And he would say, yeah, exactly. So he's definitely got that mindset, which is great to see. I think for Rowett, I mean, credit to Rowett. I mean, the last few teams he's managed, they've had money to spend on players. He's suddenly in a situation with Millwall where he's got to be really tight of who he can go for and be very restrictive. And yes, you could argue he's probably got a nice challenge, maybe thrives off that and likes that. But when you've been a manager and you've had, millions of pounds spent on players, you can always take your pick who you want. And suddenly you've been told, like, you can't do that anymore. You've got to be really careful who you go for and try and get free transfers. I don't know where the attraction is there. I think if it was the other way around, if you're a manager struggling and you can't spend money, and then you'd be given a move to a club where you've got loads of money to spend, that must be an amazing feeling. But to go the other way, how is he sort of dealing with it? It makes me wonder how he's got that kind of patience almost, and he's still around kind of, wheeling and dealing in the transfer window. And he seems to be enjoying it for whatever reason, and he's still there. And I think he's still got a plan. Maybe it's a plan, a process he wants to sort of try and deliver.
I think the club are in a good position as well, though. So, I mean, I think, I think what was interesting is when we signed Nisbet, I think even Aldo had a few words to say about it and saying how we believe it'll be good for Gary's squad. And, it's like I said, it was a team effort and a club effort, which is obviously something they addressed when he came in initially after Harvey Bustle left. It was like, right, Alex is now the director of football / transfers, in that kind of sense. So it is interesting kind of angle on that one. And I guess with that, steer it back to Flemming. I mean, that, like, if he was to go, I personally disagree, Joe. I think the value is I think he is a bit higher, but I get where you're coming from there. I mean, where would you start to begin to replace these players, Dan? I mean, I'm not going to ask you for names, but do you trust the club to get it right? If it was, 3 or 4 other Zian Flemmings, like Gary said to Jodo at the end of the season last season.
I'm not too sure if I can completely, it's a difficult one. We found Zian Flemming, and we have made some other good signings in the not too, not that long ago. But if you look at our most recent transfer window, I've spoken a lot about January, so I'm not going to drag on. It was a very poor window, and some of summer's last summer's business was good. Some of it has been poor. I still think the jury is out on Alex Aldridge. So I don't know. I don't know whether he might change the system if we lose Zian Flemming. Obviously, he's kind of played with one up top most of the time. Now having Nisbet and Bradshaw might go to 2 to try and make up for the possible goals that we're going to lose if he goes. I think that would probably be his solution. I think for Gary Rowett's solution, he'd probably want to go back to that 5-3-2 that he started last season, because we know he kind of likes the 5 back, and to put in another striker up front that we've just signed would probably happen.
With Essay though, so if we go away we don't do away with the wingers, we go 5-3-2, which I think you're right. I think that's probably the plan. If Flemming goes, he'll probably go with 3-man midfield. Maybe that's why he's looking at Lewis Travis potentially and other players, and go with Nisbet and Bradshaw up front. It'd be very harsh to drop Bradshaw off the season we had, and of course Nisbet with the newborn, you think he's going to start as well. So it sounds logical he would probably go with 2 up front and maybe a 5-3-2 formation. But then I feel sorry for the young lad, Essay. I mean,
I think you have the ability to throw him in also as a 10 though, because then you would open it up to having a more advanced midfielder. And maybe in games where, hopefully it'll be more often than not, but where we expect to have more of the ball, or try and have more of an incentive in the games. I think Eze will still be eased into it, I think, this year. I think Rowett is kind of shot off in the foot by saying he'll be starting more games, but I think he's trying to ease him. Yeah, goddamn.
Sorry, if you look at the game against Blackpool where we played that 5-back system, we almost had Flemming playing as like a kind of hybrid sort of number 10 kind of right-hand sided winger kind of role, and then on the other side you kind of had what will kind of play in a kind of left wing hybrid kind of striker role. Maybe that might be something he looks to do with Romain Esse kind of next season. But one thing he can't do, even if he does want to play this 5-3-2, is he can't leave us short in the winger positions, because he left us short in the winger positions in January, which saw Vogelsama and Honeymoon and, I think Styles played there for quite a bit.
And also pace, Dan, as well. I mean, so we kind of struggled last season until Watmore and Burt came in. Everyone was saying for the first part of the season, where's the pace? Yeah, and as Burt was and Watmore, in and out, at least they gave us pace and we needed it at times,
I think the game's also a lot more fluid now as well, though, and I think you need to have different options, and it's not necessarily fixed to formations. I think you need to be able to mix it up game by game and catch people off, because we had a good result at Blackpool. I guess Blackpool didn't expect us to play the back 5. When we changed to the back 4, we caught teams off guard last season as well, with like wins against Preston away and stuff like that, when Preston were notoriously good at home at time. So I think you need to have that kind of ability to mix it up a little bit as well.
But Omar, on that formation against Blackpool, it was more of a 3-5-2 as opposed to 5-3-2. The reason being the wing backs, we had Shackleton on one side and Stiles on the other. And I think it worked with Leonard playing as the third defender because it just felt more attacking. That formation, it seemed like we were on the front foot. What I can't stand is when there's a 5 at the back and it's very defensive. It feels like a 5 almost. Matt Demora is a little bit not effective in the final third. He's great defensively. You've got Wallace on the other side again. He's not really the best in the final third either. And that's what really does my nut in. When we play that 5-3-2 formation, if it's set up that way, it's very, very negative and you're right in pressure. But suddenly, those two wing-backs are attack-minded. I don't mind playing 5 at the back because we do feel we've got the extra player in that final third. And like Dan said, the number 10 then pulls out to the side, becomes more like a kind of 3-5...
3-4-3.
3-4-3. So that's what I was. Yeah.
5-2-3, 5-3-2.
more attacking sort of players in that final third, and we do look more sort of fluid in our attacking approach.
Well, I do agree
as well. Sorry, Amber, I keep butting in.
That's all right.
That Blackpool game, it kind of felt like when Gary Rowett kind of first came in, when kind of, if you kind of look back, the game that kind of stands out to me where we was quite good at doing it was just after the lockdown game, the Charlton game, where we won 1-0, Jake Cooper scored, where kind of you would have almost a bit like when Sheffield United got promoted under Chris Wilder a few years ago. You'd kind of have your middle centre-back, which was Hutchinson, who would just kind of stay back, and then one of either your right-hand side centre-back or your left-hand side centre-back. In that Charlton game, it was Cooper making those kind of forward runs, kind of almost at times beyond the strikers as well, trying to give us another option. In the Blackpool game, it was Leonard providing them legs, getting up and down. Obviously, got the assist for the first goal. So I think you can play 5 at the back attacking, but you need to have the personnel to kind of do it.
Yeah.
My bugbear all the time is that we don't have defenders that can move the ball around quick enough. That's what I personally think, because you give Cooper the ball on the left-hand side, it takes him about 5 minutes to get out of his feet. And it's not criticism too per se, but I just don't think that's the role we can do. Correct. It's just like it takes them ages to get out of their feet and then zip it across, which is what Charlie Cresswell was so good at. Why he offers so much at the back line, I thought. But just to end it off Flemming then, guys. Do you think it will happen, Joe? What's your gut instinct?
I think it will happen only because he's a decent player. I think Burnley identified him as somebody who can do that number 10 role for them. I think off the pitch they were done their due diligence on him in the sense that they'll know what person he is. He's a really nice guy. He trains hard. All these things probably paint a picture of what the person is. So I think they will go for him. The question is how many times can we keep rejecting their offer to a point where they then go, right, that's 3 offers now, we're not doing it anymore. So it is a bit of a gamble. You are playing a bit Russian roulette a little bit with it.
Joe, yes or no, is Flemming leaving to Burnley?
Is he leaving? I'm going to say yes.
Okay. I personally agree with you. The only reason why is I think if there's anyone else, is there enough substance behind it? But I think this has clearly got enough behind it that Burnley want him. And I think Flemming probably would want the move. So I'm going to agree with you. I'm reluctantly. Dan, is he going?
I do think it's going to happen, but I don't think it's going to kind of be what I think it's going to be one that kind of drags on.
Yeah.
Think back a few years when, George Saville left to Borough for what was a big sum of money. We kind of almost spent summer kind of pre-planning for that transfer. I kind of feel like early doors, the amount of players we're being linked to this early on, it almost feels like we might be doing the same again. So I do think it's going to happen, but I don't think it wouldn't surprise me if he was still here for the friendly against Fortuna and played the first few league games.
Interesting. Saville played the first game of the season, but you're right to mention the Fortuna Sittard game. And just a little plug to our podcast that's gone out on Monday. Mickey done a show with the Fortuna Sittard fan, which was really good insight from their sides about, how they think of Flemming and also the 15% sell-on clause, which we did touch on a little bit. I think Dan mentioned earlier. We'll move on, but I want to throw in one more thing. Scott Twine didn't get a game for Burnley last year and plays the same position as Flemming. Will you have it? You having him, Dan? Would you like him?
After he salmon acted the den, absolutely not. No, I can't take someone who does that. That's almost as bad as Ollie Burke's TikTok video. He's a good player, but
Millwall fans don't forget, do we?
No.
That was the first thing that came out of me.
Yeah. Forget the fact that he's a top player, he's a really high prospect. That's quite young as well. No, straight away, it's what he does. You're right.
You're the Stone, really, when he dies.
if they use Twine, they're going to use him as a bargaining chip to knock a couple of million off, and we only then have a solution for one season. So what happens next summer? We won't have Twine, and then we're back to square one. So unless it's a permanent deal, which I don't see Burnley doing, then it's a no-go.
So it's in everyone's interest to get it done quickly. I think, they only want it done quickly so they can sort out. We want it quickly so we can then look at other targets. I'm sure Zian Flemming wants to get it sorted out as well for his own personal. So the longer it drags on, the worse it's going to get. So I think we just need to get something, done this week if we can, really.
Fun fact: did you know that Burnley started their pre-season more than a week ago? Kompany got them all in like a week and a half ago, and Premier doesn't start.
Is that punishment for going up into the Premier League?
Well, this is it. He was on the other lap with Gary Neville, and I watched it, and he's like, "Yeah, we've got to back early to do some physical work for the next 2 weeks." So like, he's drilling them hard and getting them ready.
They basically had the league title once since February. They've basically been on the beach since February, so they kind of needed, to be fair.
Do agree with you. Right, let's steer it onto some more rumours and transfers that could or could not happen. We'll start with the ins and the good stuff, the exciting stuff. This week we've been linked to a very few names, and I think we'll just open it to the floor to discuss each one as a whole. Josh Koroma has been linked to the club. Joe Bryant, as of this morning, from I think John Percy from the Telegraph, has been linked to the club, and supposedly talks are progressing well, essentially for medical this week. Another one that could be in before Wednesday, or obviously when this is out, when pre-season starts. And lastly, Lewis Travis is still looming in the background. Right, go on, Joe. I'll come to you first. The name's there. How do you feel?
That's a weird one. So I don't know what the offer was, but I know it was a 6-figure offer. So let's say it's 900,000. Well, fuck me, the guy's still in contract, isn't he, at the moment?
For 3 years, for 3 more years, and he's their captain.
He's their captain, and they know what he's worth. He's a good age as well. So again, just what are you playing at? Like, is that just them testing the waters to see what response they get? I don't get it, but they haven't then followed up with a second offer either. So it's a real sort of weird one, to be honest with you. But I would love to see that Lewis. I think it'd be a good signing for us. Definitely give us a bit more quality, a bit more experience, and more importantly, who's someone who's a leader. Yeah, we spoke before on previous shows. You don't really have leaders. Yeah, some of them wear the armbands like Jake Cooper, but he's not really a leader either. I think if anything, I think Saville's probably the only leader we've got in the actual team at the moment, and possibly Flemming as well. So getting more players like with character, that've got a bit of personality, and that can sort of, lift the team, I think is important,
And Josh Koroma and Joe Bryant, mate, thoughts on them, Joe?
Yeah, Koroma, I was never really a big fan of, to be honest with you. I mean, he's a Dulwich boy, and he also Peckham Boyle, I think he's quite
he's local boy, and he played for Leyton Orient and got moved to Huddersfield. That's his.
Yeah, I mean, he's I guess he's got some legs on him. He's quite quick. Again,
he's pace.
He hasn't scored much, I don't think, last season. I think he's only scored, 2 or 3 goals, I think, for them. So he's not exactly been prolific for them. Joe Bryant, I really rate. I mean, I don't know how good he is now. I mean, obviously, he hasn't played much last season, being over in Nice. But I remember when he played at Fulham, and he was a decent player, technically very, very good. Yeah, and great left foot, great at delivering crosses. He used to get up and down the pitch quite well. So I'm hoping that rumour's true, and that gets over the line.
You having Joe Bryant, Dan? I mean, personally for me, played 40-odd games in the Premier League, was really good for Bristol City, I remember before, and also just as good for Fulham the year they went up, I think, when they beat us at the Den, if memory serves me right. And I remember that game where we could have won, and, a disallowed goal first half. I remember Joe Bryant just being a really solid, good Championship player, and potentially a Premier League player. It's not materialised for him, but you having Joe Bryant, Dan?
Yeah, I think, Joe's touched on there. He has kind of lost his way a little bit in the last few years. But I think, he's in his peak now. He's 29. If you can kind of get him a bit more regular football, I do think you'll kind of see the best out of him. Interesting. Apparently, he's rejected Bristol City already earlier in the transfer window, saying apparently he wanted to go abroad. But then I've seen some of their fans saying today that they've only offered him a 1-year contract. He was looking for something a bit longer. But usually John Percy from the Telegraph's usually a very reliable source when it comes to transfer rumours. He's usually bang on it. So, I do really rate him. I think he has lost his way. But if you'd have told me kind of just like 3 years ago, I think it was 2020 when he scored that brace in the playoff final. If you'd have told me that we'd sign him, I probably would have laughed in your face. So I think it's a great signing.
It does present that risk, doesn't it, as well, though, I think, Dan, as well. I think we mentioned it, he's lost his way, but it's also on the player. Where's his head at? Does he want to have a long-term deal for his last payday, or is he looking to really cement his place again in the Championship? It's a toss of the coin, and that's the risk I think it presents, isn't it? I don't know what you think.
I think usually the club kind of do their due diligence, not just on the player, the way they play, but also kind of the way the personalities of the player. I knew it was kind of a big thing under Neil Harris, and Gary Rowett mentioned the togetherness of the squad. He's mentioned that kind of quite a lot, kind of throughout his tenure as manager. So I feel like that's something the club still do their due diligence on before signing a player.
Okay, yeah, I do agree with you there. That'd be interesting to see how it unfolds. Go on, Joe.
So very quick with that Joe Bryan one, it's also, you do question their aspirations, what they want in their career. It's a little bit like Burke in a sense where sometimes I think football kind of comes second to lifestyle. And there's a rumour going around that I think, although he likes it in South France, that he wanted to come back to London for some reason. And
family, maybe.
To London, a bit like Burke. Yeah, Burke's got his missus over here now, doesn't really want to be in Germany. I spoke to him very briefly at the end of the season awards thing at Millwall, kind of spoke, and he mentioned about that ideally he wants to get a move back over here again. And I sort of like joked while I was being serious. I said to him, well, it's lovely, but we're going to afford to pay your wages. And he sort of shrugged his shoulders like, yeah, I know, well, hopefully something will get sorted. But you can see where his mind's at. It's not about winning trophies. I mean, it's not about putting 10 out of 10 performances. I think it's about give 6 or 7 out of 10 performances like these players, get in the mood, make sure their lifestyles sorted, and getting one last pay, I guess, last contract. So I hope that if we do sign Joe Bryan, I hope he'll be a good sign for us and he will perform and give it everything. And like Dan said, we don't know how good he's going to be. He's had a season off almost, hasn't he? Although he's not old, he's not exactly young, 29, so he's sort of 30, 32. So you want to hope that he comes here for the right reasons if we do get him and hopefully performs, which is what we want to do.
Yeah, and Dan, what of Josh Koroma do you think? I mean, I know he was part of the Mill Kicks program as a teenager, which is obviously the community scheme thing they run for youth in the area. He's obviously a local lad. We're talking about a circumstantial thing. Sounds like it's a match made in heaven for him to come back to the area, and come to the Den. You having him as a player? I mean, I don't mind him. I'm not going to lie. He's a bit rough around the edges, but I think Huddersfield are trying to fight to keep him, which is obviously what Neil Warnock thinks of him as well. I do remember him scoring a goal at the Den against us in one of their wins against us as well. I don't mind it. It's a different option, isn't it, I suppose, in the forward areas. But what do you reckon, Dan?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. He's a bit rough around the edges. But he's got pace, which is, something we do lack in the squad. I think we're going to touch on Burey in a bit. But if Burey leaves, that's another kind of quick player we're kind of down. Wouldn't have surprised me if the links just came around because he's a local lad and he's out of contract. But it also wouldn't have surprised me if Neil Warnock hadn't had stayed at Huddersfield. He probably would be a Mill player at some point, if we're not already. We've spent the first half of the season out on loan at Portsmouth, and I think he kind of flattered to deceive there. Ended up back at Huddersfield under Neil Warnock, and he managed to kind of get a bit of a tune out of him. So I think, I don't think it's one that's going to happen. But I don't mind the profile of the player. The kind of, we're looking for maybe a bit a winger to kind of at least give us that option. Or we touched on the formation. Maybe he does want to kind of play a bit more wingers.
Mm-hmm. He's also struggled with his injuries as well, so that's something to put a question mark against his name in recent times. But we'll see. A bit of a non-starter this one, guys. Lyndon Dykes today, at the time recorded on Monday evening, he signed a new contract with QPR till 2026. Obviously, quite a turmoil year for him. He started the year with pneumonia. Was linked to us and supposedly made a bid for him, Joe. Bit Marmite to QPR fans, but the reaction today, generally, I've seen they're quite happy about it. It's a bit of a shame, really, we missed out on that one. But I suppose we went for Nisbet. If we really wanted Dykes, we probably would have gone for him, I feel like. But I don't know what you think, mate.
I think he's one of the players, several months ago when we linked with him, that I wasn't too excited about. I thought, if anything, I thought that money could be spent elsewhere on someone else. But I think in more recently, over the summer transfer window, you look at him and you look at Nisbet and you think, actually, you can see the logic by getting him in. A big, strong target man. If you're going to play him and Nisbet up front together, I think they were linking quite well. And suddenly you kind of fall in love with the story a little bit, don't you? You hope it happens. And of course, when it doesn't happen and they sign a new contract, you want even more. you know. So I'm gutted, and I think he would be a good signing for us. But you know, it's done now. I guess we've got to move on and look at other transfers maybe.
Would have been an all Scottish front line potentially, Dan. I mean, you know, I can see it already. You know, the club shop starting to sell tartan kilts and stuff like that. The Den and you know things that we're starting to lap it all up big time. And bagpipes happening when they score their goals. But I mean,
Hacky spies instead of old ones. Can you imagine that?
Oh. I mean, if you said to me two Scottish strikers and a Welsh striker as our front line, it would have been an interesting one. But yeah, I mean, missed out on Dykes. How do you feel about that one, Dan?
When I first heard the news in January at 3 million, I certainly wasn't interested. But we've gone back in for him. You know, the kind of rough bid was kind of 2 million. I think it was kind of, you know, around 1 million, about just over 1 million. You know, you can have that, and then there's some add-ons. Wasn't too keen on it at first, but kind of the more I thought about it, and then I watched him play for Scotland, I thought he was actually quite good in them games for Scotland. You know, I kind of the more I was kind of like, oh, yeah, actually, you know what, I think it'd be a good signing. And it's something I touched in the last show I did with you, Omer, about possible transfer targets, about trying to bring in kind of a bit more of a target man kind of option. I certainly think he would have kind of ticked that box, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen now, obviously. I think we're going to be looking now closer to kind of that £3 million mark, which we did bid in January, which I don't think the club's going to kind of pursue.
Do you think it would have been, we'd sign both this bit and Dykes if it was available, or do you think it was one or the other? I mean, I think with Dykes, you touched on him there about how he plays. He's one of those players I think that doesn't get appreciated because of his scoring figures, but I think amongst his teammates and, you know, people at the club, they'd be like, this geezer's a workhorse and leads the line for us and works his heart out for us. But do you think we'd have signed both of them, or?
If he wants to play two up front, then yeah. You know, if he wants to play two up front now, you've kind of got Bradshaw on this bit and probably Glass Watmore as a striker. I'd probably say that's his natural position. We don't have any other strikers, and they're all kind of same kind of. Yeah, okay, I'll give you Vogel Sam. They're all kind of the same kind of profile.
Is he actually a footballer? I don't know.
They've all kind of got the same kind of profile. They're not massively tall. You know, they're not overly quick. You know, they're quick, but they're not like someone you'd go, oh, like bloody hell, like they're a stupidly quick player. You know, someone who go tearing down the wing. So you know, having that kind of differential option would have been nice in Lyndon Dykes, especially someone who has a lot of championship experience as well.
You mentioned there as well,
I agree,
and that Scotland game where he scored one and got an assist. I mean, the goal that he scored was okay, but I think it's the way he got that assist. If you remember, he held the ball up really well, really strong hold defender, and laid the ball off for whoever it was that sort of took their chance to score. And we probably lack a player like that can sort of hold the ball up in the box and bring other players in, you know. And I looked at him that game, I thought, wow, I can see why Mill been after him. And that kind of made me want him even more after watching his performance, you know. So, but then, I don't know, is that rumour with Sidney Van Hooijdonk, Omar, is that still going at the moment?
I've seen it.
Haven't seen anything since the original January link. You know, on paper sounds a fantastic player, but the rumours in January also that Nottingham Forest might try for him. And his old man, I was actually looking at him earlier today. His old man used to play for Forest.
He did. He's quite good. Big player.
Yeah, he's a very good goal scorer. His record looks like. So you know, I think if an offer came from Forest playing in the Premier League, playing somewhere his old man played, he might struggle to turn that one down as compared to us. But you know, it might.
Where there's no offer made down at the moment, and now Dykes has obviously signed a new contract. Do we then put our attention back onto that again? Is what I'm thinking. You know, and that could be. Otherwise, I can't think of many other target men that we've been linked with at the moment, apart from these two.
No, yeah, I think we do need to kind of maybe relook at him. I don't think from what it sounds like, there isn't really a future for him. I think it's Bologna he's contracted to. He spent last season on loan in Holland, but I think he's contracted to Bologna. Doesn't sound like there's going to be much for future for him there. So I think, you know, if the problem was he think he scored about 16 goals last season, which has probably bumped his price tag up, even if it was, you know, 2 million in January. You're probably looking maybe around double that now, you know.
Well, I think 1 year left, I think, on his contract, I think.
Okay. I didn't know that. So if he did, that might kind of knock the price down a little bit.
I mean, one of the name guys that's obviously been linked to us is Cox, the left back. For the life of me, I can't remember his name. George Cox?
George sits up, yeah.
Is that gone quiet if we get Joe Bryan? Do you think that's a no-goer? I mean, what do you reckon, Joe?
I mean, technically, we still need a second left back. Although I do love that. Was his name Dan? Is it Macaulay, the youngster we saw for the under-21s?
Malachi. Adam Malachi.
Macaulay?
Adam Malachi.
That's the guy. Him. He was quality, you know. And although I wouldn't say that, hey, let's put him straight in the first team, let's get him started in the first team. I think to be in and around the squad, I think he deserves that chance and you know, to play some games and be a bit of a backup to Joe Bryan if he signs. That'd be a decent option. And Riot was there, wasn't he, Dan? That game for the under-21 playoff final thing, and he would have saw his performance. I'm sure he would have done, and he'd been very, very impressed with him. So I hope he'll get a look. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, technically we do need more left backs. I mean, hey, Murray Wallace is still there, I guess. So perhaps not so much now. We've got Joe Bryan.
One name as well we haven't mentioned is Callum Styles. Obviously, there's been a bit caught in the Athletic, so they're going to look to sign him. I can see that with obviously Valerian Ismail going in there as a manager of him at Barnsley. Rowett came out and said in South London Press this week that, you know, the release clause at the minute is too high. If they want to bring it down, then we might be interested. So I think it's a shame.
Chris hit the nail on the head of these chats that one, so I don't know what his source was for that one, but I want to try and tap him up for a bit more information. But he did say that.
Well, without naming names of anyone that's kind of helped us here, I think Wright had the chance of signing, and we were told that maybe it was like a tap in, but he didn't want it for whatever reason. So again, the reason behind that, yeah, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but obviously we all like Styles. I'm sure we all rate him as a player, but stands for manager, and then you doesn't see him as someone who would be the right fit, then you've got to trust his decision, haven't you?
Controversial opinion. Did Styles do this as more than Shackleton last year, in the sense that to justify spending £3 million on him for whatever? I'm not saying we should then go for Shackleton. I'm not saying Shackleton's available, but I get what everyone sees as Styles, the technical nature of him and stuff. But I would argue you could sign Shackleton or Styles in that sense, in that kind of role they both play. And also, Styles didn't set the world alight at the Den. Like, it didn't do a lot. There wasn't many games where I thought, there's a couple of times we saw his talent where he had a shot and you're like, bloody hell, only he could probably do that on the pitch today. But there wasn't enough times where I thought, here we go, he's making a difference.
I think injury, when it gets him within it as well, I think that impacted him. I think his first game against Reading. I can't remember what it was now. He plays a wing back, wasn't it, for us? And he had a great game, and he was up against someone who was really, really good, a winger. I can't remember who it was, but everyone just praised him about how well he coped with it. Actually, it was against Stoke, it was against Forest, and it was their right wing back who went to Tottenham. What's his name?
Jed Spence.
Yeah.
Did he play that game? I don't know. Can't remember.
I remember there was a real battle between him and Jed Spence, and he done really, really well. And Millwall fans good Jed Spence, but shit, of course, you know. And he played really well. And then there was a game against Rotherham. We played in the centre midfield.
I remember that game. Yeah,
he was great that game. Yeah,
that game was really good.
And he bossed it. He really did boss it. And then again, one of the games towards the end of the season, I think he came on, but played in a sort of number 10 role. And again, he looked really good there as well.
What I'm trying to say is that I don't think he's I think I kind of agree with Rowett here. If that's the stance, the price tag, and thinking where else you could strengthen the squad. I just don't. Yeah. There's undoubtedly a good player there.
He's young as well. How old is he? 22, 23?
He's technical ability. He's like, you know, he's really hit the, you know, he's really kind of made a name for himself and plays for Hungary. And you know, he's a good player, but I just don't think he's done enough for me to say he's a must sign. I don't know.
Even for financial gain to that return on investment, you think someone like him, 22, 23 years old, international, versatile player, you buy him, you know in a year or two you could probably sell him for more money.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. But I think it's just, if there's other targets that we want that are a bit more priority, I can kind of see the club's logic. And I would sign Styles if you said to me, we can have him and other players that we want. But I can see where the club's coming from, I feel like. Yeah, it is interesting, but we'll see what happens on the ins. On the outs, Tyler Burey is not keen on an Oxford move, according to Alan Nixon, reluctant Nico on Twitter that everyone knows him by. Do you want to keep him?
I don't think it's Oxford, is it? I think it's just League One. He sees himself as a Championship player.
I think he said Oxford's. I think Oxford was in the article on Sunday. I think from Nico, wasn't it?
A team that's had a bid accepted. Yeah, it doesn't sound like he's too.
Do you know what the bid is, Dan? Do you know what the bid is? What we offered?
No, I
Hopefully
haven't
he'll
heard
avoid.
the numbers. I think the word in South London press is like we've accepted a bid and it's got some kind of clause on but I think it's got a significant sell-on clause, which kind of sounds like to me probably the fee isn't as high as we probably all think it is.
I reckon you're lucky to get 500,000 when all add-ons come into play and stuff like that. You're
I,
not looking at
I
a
would
lot.
say it'd be 500,000 absolute tops.
Yeah.
You know, he's kind of showed flashes in the Championship. That's probably why he's kind of thinking, you know, I might be able to get a Championship move. I know obviously South London press said we've accepted a bid from a League One team, which we now know is Oxford. And they did say there has been Championship interest for Tyler Burey, so maybe he's trying to kind of get a Championship move. I don't really kind of know what club might be interested in him in the Championship. We'll have to kind of wait and see. Might kind of be one for maybe kind of the lower end teams, maybe the teams that have just came up looking for maybe a bit of, you know, Championship experience, stuff like that. So, but you know, I'm pretty certain he won't be a Millwall player for much longer.
I agree with you. Joe, anything on Tyler Burey before we move on to a couple of 21 signings made?
It's a shame. On his day, you can see he's got something about him. He's got a bit of quality. Yeah, but then I looked at his stats, and I know a lot of them were substitute appearances, but he scored like, I think it's 3 goals and 53 appearances for Millwall, which is not great. You know, not a great return. Wright is clearly not a massive fan of his. Yeah, he doesn't start. I mean, when he's available to start, he'd rather choose someone else over him. So you do question if he does stay with us another season, will he feature much, especially if we're looking to strengthen our squad and bring new players in over the summer? Yeah, how much lower would he fall in the pecking order? So I can see the logic behind selling him. Personally, I think he should have just loaned him out rather than sell him. But then I guess they're probably thinking, well, they sell him for cheap with a sell-on clause top of there. Potentially that could be worth something to us in the future. Who knows?
I guess you've also got a Maku and stuff like that rised up who are a few years younger. So
True.
if you're going to stagnate them by keeping Burey around, I suppose.
Could always put a buyback clause in Tyler Burey's deal as well. You know, almost a long-term loan deal. Say as if he does go to Oxford. Say as if we sell him for 500k, put a 1.5 million sell-on clause in there, buyback clause. Sorry. All of a sudden he goes to League One, gets 10 goals, 10 assists next season, and Oxford are getting bid to like 3 million. All we do is, right, we'll buy him back for 1.5 million, and then who was bidding 3 million for him? There you go. There's Tyler Burey back for 3 million.
I've got a feeling once you let Tyler Burey leave Millwall, he won't ever sign a piece of paper to sign back for Millwall. But that's just, you know, I hate to say, but I don't know. It feels like it's a Fred Oyedema situation a little bit, isn't it? I think, you know, even if he was desperate, I don't know if we'd see him back. Maybe I'm being critical and it's a bit harsh on Burey, but it just feels like it's coming to an end. Similar to Marlon Romeo, you know, like that kind of.
Yeah,
There's a love-hate relationship there quite clearly, and I think it's
I just
probably
don't
getting
think
better with them.
he's the right fit for us, and it's a shame because, you know, I know he's had a bit of stick from certain section of the fans last season, but whether that's, you know, right or wrong, I mean, okay, no Millwall player deserves stick from their own supporters, apart from Vogsauer. But I'm joking. But no, he needs, is it fair to say he needs to have tougher skin? He needs a little bit better. You know, you're going to get abuse. I mean, back in the old days, in the 80s and 90s, you know, players used to get called, you know, CUNT every 5 minutes, you know, for not tracking back, not putting a tackle in. And sometimes I think a lot of these players today are a little bit too sensitive. You know, they've got to be a little bit tougher to it. And perhaps if Tyler Burey had been somebody else who had a stronger mindset, they would say, you know what, I'm going to see it as a challenge. I want to win these fans over. Yeah, and they'll work their bollocks off and they'll track back and they'll put tackles in. They'll do all the not so nice stuff and then deliver at the other ends. But you get some players like Tyler Burey, unfortunately, that probably buckle to that a little bit, fall for it, and don't want to perform maybe out of principle. Who knows? So yeah, it's a sad one. Who might tell him what to do? You know, I'll do something different. You would do something different. So would Dan, but he's his own person, and he chose to be the way he wanted to be and behave the way he wanted to behave. You know.
Yeah, whilst I wouldn't personally slag the fans back off myself or give any gestures back, supposedly, I don't have a problem with it. Actually, if he's getting the abuse, I think he's well within his right to give it back. To be honest, Morrison did it, and we all love him. So, you know, you take what you can with that. But yeah, you go, it's all done now. 2 signings for the 21s. I did miss this one last week, but Dylan Adai signed, the goalkeeper, and also Ethan Wadey from Chelsea. I want to come to you, Dan, because I feel like you were more on the pulse of these two. I mean, I know Ethan Wadey's an American goalkeeper, that was released by Chelsea. Give me a bit about Dinner of the Day that we can look out for. Background. What's it? Where was he previously? Yeah, Leicester previously. You said, yeah.
Leicester, yeah. I haven't actually checked this out, but I think his brother might play for Crawley Town as their goalkeeper, Corey Adai, I think. That's a possibility. But that might just be me joining the dots up there. I'm hoping, my thinking is the fact he's brought in 2 goalkeepers primarily for the youth team is that hopefully he's going to get Joe Wright out on loan, try and get him a bit more men's football. I think he's only played at Cray. It'd be nice to try and get him a bit higher up the pyramid. And obviously, I know Ryan Sanford's left the club this summer. I mean, if they're absolutely paranoid about having a 4th choice goalkeeper, then that might be why we've got 2 goalkeepers, because obviously we can't, it's very unlikely. I think they're going to both come from playing youth football to playing in the first team. And, only one of them plays for one can play in the 21s every week. So it's interesting the fact they bought 2. So I think they've got to be looking at loaning Joe Wright out.
What was interesting, Joe, is with this whole thing, Andy Marshall was the new goalkeeper coach from last season, obviously came in quite late into pre-season, but there's been interviews, and also I remember bumping into him on the train back from QPR because he's rushing to get to the Brit Awards at the time, for example. But he's trusted to look after the goalkeeping department. So the new contracts for Bart and Long, obviously I think he was the one that kind of put a word into Wright saying maybe we should look at Long to play it that last season. That's, I think he's trusted to look after this and also look after the development of the likes of Joe Wright. Obviously, Sanford tried to get him on loan last year, which is why we signed Connell Truman, for example. Didn't really work out. We judged Sanford's not good enough after his loan spell. I think it's quite a nice development in that sense where, we're trying to develop these players, get them out on loan, especially our own talent.
I think it's exciting. Yeah, look at the youngsters we brought in and the existing youngsters in Joe Wright, who I'm a massive fan of. I think he's a great keeper. And I think you're right. I think it's great for our future to get the infrastructure right on the goalkeeper side, because that's just as important as the outfield players. What worries me is our existing goalkeepers at the moment. We've got about 10 goalkeepers and not one decent goalkeeper. It seems like, you could argue Bart was a decent keeper, but we all know he's got his disabilities almost, like with his knees. But that's the worry for me. It's great we're looking at the future. It's great we're looking at our youngsters and our infrastructure, but ultimately we need to be signing a decent keeper. And I don't see Rowett has got any aspiration of signing a keeper at the moment, it seems. So, what's going to happen start of the season? Are we going to have Long in goal again? I don't know. I think a lot of the fans at one point were quite split for Long, where I think now it's sort of 60-40 in favour of getting Long out.
I wonder if Flemming was to leave and we had a £10 million budget or more money to spend, would that maybe promote the idea of signing a goalkeeper? I feel like you got something to add to the conversation.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned. We've had quite a lot of transfer links so far this summer. Not one of them's a goalkeeper. Makes me think we won't be signing a goalkeeper, which is, a bit of a concern to me. I personally, I tried to defend Jules Long for as long as possible. I know there was some calls, particularly after the whole game, for him to kind of come out of the team. And I was like, no, it wasn't. Maybe could have done a bit better for that guy in particular, but overall I didn't think he'd play too badly. But then, on the final day, I think, Joe says it's 60-40. I think it's a bit more than 60-40. To be honest, kind of the split kind of wants him kind of a bit more out. So
I was trying to be nice to him then.
Yeah. No, I think the fact we haven't been linked to a goalkeeper is a bit concerning. I don't think we'll be getting one in.
Yeah, well,
Jordan's not a terrible keeper. I mean, I thought about the other day. I mean, trying to analyse certain things he does. I mean, again, we all talk about his foot, the feet he's got on the ball. He's got great footwork on the ball, great with his clearances and his passing with his feet.
he's just distinctly average. He's just distinctly average, Joe.
Well, I think his shot stopping from close range is very, very good. I've seen this make some loads of saves from close range. Think how the hell did he stop that? Okay,
the Sheffield United game. That was the second half in that Sheffield United game. He was really good.
But the first half, he also let in the free kick. That was a really poor.
He reminds me a lot of Jordan Archer. Really good from short distance, long distance, not very good.
Anything from long distance is not great. I think that's the only thing. If he can just work on that, and I don't know how goalkeepers can just work on something. You think they'd just be good at it, wouldn't they? At all sorts of goalkeeping. But he seems to be so good in so many different areas of goalkeeping, except for long range. And you think that would probably be the easiest one, because you see the ball coming, don't you? You can kind of get to it, whatever. But that just seems to be his weakness. So unfortunately, more than one occasion, probably about 5 or 6 occasions a season, he's been beaten from range, maybe a free kick or shot outside the box for open play. And it's cost us. And dare I say, I think it's cost us a playoff spot because because of his fault, we conceded goals and lost points.
I think you need to be a character to be a goalkeeper at Millwall as well. You need to have something about you. David Ford, you watch these goalkeepers come over when they come out to the start of the game, and I sit Coleman Lane lower. You feel it with the fans when they give some to the goal player, and the player gives it back to them. You feel the passion, and there is that kind of connection. And I don't feel it with Long. I can't describe it or quantify it, but for me, when I'm sitting there behind the goal, you know straight away whether or not the fans are having the goalkeeper, and you can tell. And I think with Long, you don't feel that. I don't think it's quite the extreme of Archer when Archer is on his way out, but it is in the balance a bit. And I do think that will tip very quickly at the start of the season if he doesn't get off to a flyer. So we'll have to see on that one. But
I'll touch on that.
Weird thing, I would say that George Long is a bit normal as a goalkeeper. I think you've got to be a bit crazy to be a goalkeeper. I mean, who the hell wants to stand there and have balls shot at them from 100 miles per hour, And I think he's a bit normal. You see, there's no real motions there. Even when he concedes a goal, there's no real motion. At the start of games, or at half time, he goes to put his towel in the goal. You look at the fans, little clap, turn around. There's no real.
Correct.
There's no energy about him. I think keepers, you've got to be a bit mental, or be a bit mad, and you've got to be a bit passionate about what you do. And for him, I think he's just such a chilled out sort of guy. There's no real high or low, is there? He's very kind of flat,
Yeah. Dan, anything to add on that before I wrap up the show?
I would say Joe obviously described him as, distinctly average, which I think is probably a fair description. But, your goalkeeper can, I think he probably was the difference at the end of the season, and they're, it's not just obviously over one game, it'll be over the course of the season. There might be games where you are absolutely crap and then you whip in a corner and then, you get a lucky header or an own goal, 1-0, your keeper bails you out. Keeper could probably win you kind of up to 12, 15 points a season. I don't have any confidence in George Long doing that. And now I don't also have that much confidence in Bart to come in and do that because he spent so much time out of the team, which sounds a weird thing to say as a goalkeeper. But when he's, getting on a bit, Bart in particular as well, I think, that's a concern. And,
So why did we give Bart a new contract then? And why did we give Long a new contract? Yeah, it's I guess we're sticking with them, ain't we, guys? By hook or by crook. We're here with them now. This is it.
Yeah.
But also, you think about when Bart has played well for us in games. I mean, we mentioned about him being very average, and Bart has pretty won us games because he kept clean sheets. His one man match performances. Many occasions where you think, geez, how the hell did we win that game 1-0? And then Bart get man of the match because he made some, 3 or 4 fantastic saves. I don't recall George Long ever getting the man of match award for one game. He's never put in a man of match performance, has he? As great as he's on the ball and everything else, he hasn't done that for us. So again, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? Really, a goalkeeper's job is to stop the ball from going to the back of the net. And if Bart's done that for us on many occasions on one man of match awards and help us win games, unfortunately, we can't do the same thing for George Long.
I do agree. Well, let's come to the end of the show. I do want to say the boys are back in pre-season training at the time of this going up on Wednesday. This is starting to come around again. We're going to start to, get it all going again, Joe. So excited.
Will Zian be there, I wonder?
Yeah, well, this is it. So Wednesday this will be out on Wednesday morning. They'll be back in pre-season training, the start of their trip. Kevin Nisbet is coming back early. He's joining the club on Wednesday. He's obviously had international duty, which was quite nice to see him say he's willing to join up early and come down. Rout was full of praise for that. It's time to go again, Joe, right? Exciting times.
Yeah, absolutely.
You go again.
I'm quite looking forward to the pre-season. It seems weird. It's amazing how quickly a year goes. When you and I were at Dartford away, do you remember pre-season? That was a year ago. And that feels like it was just last week, doesn't it? And that's when the excitement starts. When you start getting the friendlies, and you try to get to as many friendlies as you can. You look at the new team, the new players, and how they're all gelling. That's all quite exciting. It's a big lead, isn't it, to the first game of the season. So, I'm looking forward to it. And that's pre-season training. We're slowly getting back to normality, aren't we?
Absolutely. We go again, Dan. The season comes around and the excitement builds.
Yeah, looking forward to it. We've still got, just over a month. Hopefully there's a couple more transfers to get excited by. And, hopefully we kind of hit the ground running at the start of the season, because I know sometimes that can be a problem for Millwall, not starting as quick as we'd like. So hopefully, probably as tough as they come first game, but let's get on with it. Bring it on.
Middlesbrough away. It was 6th of August, isn't it? 6th of August? I think it is. Something like that. Yeah. We'll be talking more about fixtures and pre-season and wrapping up loads of bits and bobs. And be sure to check us out on our social medias at That Mill Pod. Joe, thanks for coming on today, mate.
Thanks, been an absolute pleasure. I've missed it. It feels been a while since I've been on here, so it's quite nice to sort of talk about Millwall, and there's a little bit to talk about as well. So it makes it interesting, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And thank you, Dan.
Yep, no worries. Thank you, gents. Enjoyed tonight, and I hope everyone listening has also enjoyed.
There we go. If you're excited like Dan and bought your ticket to Gillingham away on the 26th of June when it's the 15th of July, I think I've never seen someone buy a ticket for Gillingham that early. But yeah, thanks guys for tuning in. That's the end of the show, and we'll be back probably later in the week with another bit of That Mill podcast. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.